Nobody on that Boeing 737 knew who she used to be. Nobody knew the quiet woman in seat 21A, hair tied back, hoodie on, eyes tired, had once been one of the most feared and respected fighter pilots in the Air Force. Nobody knew she'd disappeared 3 years ago after a classified crash that left her presumed dead, and she was perfectly fine with it. The world believed Captain Myra Hale no longer existed, and Myra was done fighting wars that never ended. She boarded Flight 782 with the simple intention of going home, if she could even call it home anymore. She'd kept her head down, handed her ticket to the attendant, and taken her seat with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd spent years hiding in plain sight. The most dangerous thing she expected today was the rubbery airplane eggs at breakfast. She even smiled at the kid kicking the back of her seat. The way a tired ant would, not the way a former combat pilot should. The plane hummed down the runway, engines roaring, the nose lifting. Myra closed her eyes and tried to steady her breathing. Flying used to be her oxygen. Now it was a reminder of everything she'd lost. Her wingman, her identity, her life before the government turned her into a weapon and then buried her like a mistake. She thought she had escaped that chapter forever. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. 20 minutes after takeoff, just as the captain's voice crackled over the speakers to announce smooth skies, the aircraft jolted so violently half the passengers screamed. Myra's eyes snapped open. Not fear. That jolt was not turbulence. That was a failure. The lights flickered. The hum of the engines dipped. She sat up straight like someone had hooked a wire to her spine. Passengers gasped. Someone's coffee splashed across the aisle. A baby began to cry. The flight attendant, pale and stiff, rushed down the aisle with the fake calm they're trained to use. Then came the sound Myra feared most, one she had heard only in the worst days of her career. A hollow, choking sputter. Right engine winding down, her jaw clenched. She whispered, almost apologetically to herself, "Not again, not today." The left engine kept its rhythm for a few seconds more. Then its pitch changed too. Low, sick, struggling. Then silence. Dead silence. 33,000 feet in the sky. And both engines of the Boeing 737 had just died. A cabin full of strangers sat in frozen shock as the impossible happened. The plane stopped climbing and began to sink. Not a dive, not a fall, a sinking, the kind that tricks your stomach into believing gravity is confused. Someone shouted, "What's happening?" Another yelled, "Are we crashing?" The flight attendants grabbed phones, faces draining color. Myra closed her eyes. She could feel it, the subtle tilt, the speed changing, the wings losing lift. Fighters fall differently, but physics is universal. The moment an aircraft becomes a glider, a pilot knows. In the cockpit, chaos erupted, muffled but clear enough for her trained ear. Buttons, warnings, something slammed, someone cursed, and then the cabin speakers clicked on. A trembling voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've lost both engines. Please remain calm," and static swallowed the rest. Passengers began to panic. Someone fainted. A man shouted into his dead phone, "There's no signal." Why is there no signal? A woman clutched her husband's arm so tightly he winced. People prayed, cried, swore. Myra forced herself to breathe. Her pulse beat hard, fast, not fear calculation. This descent was too steep. The plane was too heavy. The glide slope wasn't controlled. They had minutes, maybe less. She could stay, Myra, the quiet woman in 21A, or she could become Captain Myra Hale. The ghost pilot the Air Force assumed was 6 feet under. Her hands shook, not from hesitation, from the weight of returning to a life she had run from. She unbuckled her seatbelt. The woman beside her gasped, "Where are you going?" "We're supposed to stay seated." Myra looked at her with an expression she had not worn in years, a calm forged in fire. Someone needs to help them. She pushed past the shaking passengers, moving toward the front with a speed that didn't match her small frame. A flight attendant tried to stop her. "Ma'am, you can't open the cockpit." Myra said quietly, firmly, "We can't open it." She repeated, locking eyes with her. There was something in Myra's stare, authority, precision, threat, and comfort all at once. A tone trained through thousands of hours in command. "You're losing altitude too fast. They don't have time." The flight attendant froze. Who are you?" The plane shuddered again, dropping a few more feet. People screamed. Myra didn't blink. "A pilot," she said. She didn't add the rest. "A fighter pilot. A dead one." The attendant stared at her like she wasn't sure whether to believe her. But the terror in the cockpit was worsening. Something crashed inside. The captain yelled something about manual restart. Another alarm wailed. The attendant made her choice. She opened the door. What hit Myra first was the heat. Cockpits got warm under stress. Then the smell of burning insulation. The captain and first officer were drenched in sweat, eyes wild, flipping switches like they were playing a losing game of whack-a-dash-mole. The captain snapped, "Who is this? Get her out. She's a pilot." The attendant shouted behind her. The captain froze only for a second. Long enough for another warning light to flash red. Myra stepped inside. "I can help," she said. The captain shook his head fast. "Ma'am, this is a 737, not some F-15 Strike Eagle." She finished for him. I know, but physics doesn't care what badge is on the metal. Engines are dead. You're dropping too steep. Restart won't catch with your current pitch, and your auxiliary power is about to fail. The first officer turned, stunned. How do you know that? Myra ignored him and focused on the controls, reading the chaos like a second language. Her mind shifted gears. Her breathing steadied. Her fear burned off like fog under sunlight. For the first time in years, she felt alive. Captain, she said slowly, if you keep this angle for another 40 seconds, you'll stall a gliding aircraft. You need to level now. The captain hesitated, pride warring with survival. Then another alarm screamed. He swallowed. Show me. Myra slid into the space behind them, not taking over, but guiding. Her voice sharpened into command. Ease the nose. Not too much, you'll lose glide. Good, hold it. That's it. Now override the The system's fighting you. The captain did as she said. The plane steadied. Barely, but it steadied. Breaths in the cabin slowed. Screams quieted. People still shook, but they could feel the difference. Myra's mind raced. They needed power. Without engines, the aircraft was a 90,000-kilogram paper airplane. Attempt crossbleed restart. She told them. The first officer blinked. We already tried. Not while level, Myra replied. Not with stabilized airflow. Do it again. He did. The engines coughed. In the cabin. Passengers gasped. Hope sparked. But hope is a fragile thing. The left engine rotated for a second, then died again. Damn it. The captain yelled. Myra bit her lip. Okay, then we glide. What's the nearest runway? The first officer checked. His voice cracked. Closest one is over 80 miles. 80 miles. Too far. Even a fighter jet would struggle without power. A commercial plane, impossible, unless... Myra's eyes narrowed. A memory flickered. Training. Emergency procedures. A maneuver no average pilot would attempt at this altitude. She whispered, barely audible. We might have one shot. The captain turned. At what? Myra met his eyes. At saving everyone on this plane. Before he could respond, another alert flash, hydraulics weakening. The cabin pressure dipped. A few masks dropped prematurely. Passengers screamed again. Myra's voice hardened, her combat voice, the one she buried years ago. Captain, trust me. Every pilot knew that tone. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a lifeline. The captain hesitated, then nodded. What do you need? He asked. Myra exhaled slowly. The weight of her past settling over her shoulders like an old flight suit. We're going to attempt a dive start. The first officer's eyes widened. That's insane. It's possible. Myra cut in. If we angle down and use speed and airflow to spool the turbines, that could tear the aircraft apart. He argued. Yes, Myra said, her voice steady, terrifyingly calm. If we do it wrong, the captain stared at her, sweat dripping down his temple. Who the hell are you? Myra looked out the window at the clouds below them, then back at him. Someone who's done this before. The cabin lurched lightly as the plane continued its powerless descent. Myra stepped forward, hands tightening around the back of the captain's seat. If we don't try, she said, we hit the ground in under 12 minutes. Everyone dies. If we do try, we might have a chance. Silence, a silence heavy enough to crush. The captain closed his eyes for a moment. Searching for courage he wasn't sure he had. When he opened them, he nodded. Tell me what to do. Myra swallowed hard. Her past wasn't behind her anymore, it was strapped in with her. 30,000 feet above Earth. About to define her all over again. She took a deep breath. Okay, first, we need speed, a lot of it. And with those words, the quiet woman from seat 1A disappeared, and the dead fighter pilot returned. The captain's hands trembled on the control column. The first officer whispered a prayer under his breath. The flight attendants clung to the jump seats, eyes wide with a kind of fear that didn't need words. The passengers had no idea what was coming next, but they could feel the tension in the Iran electric heaviness. Like the moment before lightning strikes. Myra didn't give them time to think. She leaned forward, her voice steady and razor-focused. Captain, on my count, tilt her nose 5 degrees down. No more, no less. He nodded shakily. 5 degrees. That's enough to increase airflow without overstressing the frame. She looked at the first officer. Monitor airspeed. Don't let it exceed 310 knots. If it does, pull back 2 degrees immediately. He swallowed hard, his voice shaking. 310. I got it. Myra braced her hands on the back of the captain's seat. The familiar pressure of anticipation slammed into her chest, the same pressure she felt before every combat maneuver that separated life from death. Ready? She asked. They both nodded, though neither looked ready at all. Myra exhaled. 3, 2, 1. Now, the captain eased the yoke forward. The nose dipped. The passengers screamed. The Boeing 737, a plane designed for calm commercial skies, not combat maneuvers, began to descend sharply, slicing through clouds in a controlled but terrifying dive. Drinks flew. Bags toppled from overhead bins. A woman grabbed her husband's arm so tightly her nails left marks. The kid who had kicked Myra's seat earlier cried for his mother. The engines, windmill blades spinning from the force of air rushing past. Still not catching. Not yet. Airspeed climbed. 260 knots. 0.290 knots. Mira's jaw tightened. Hold it. The captain's voice cracked. It's getting heavy. I can feel the pressure on the controls. Hold it, she repeated. The dive deepened, the plane shuddering from the strain. It was like riding a falling brick with wings. The first officer shouted, "We're at 300. Almost there," Myra said through clenched teeth. Come on, come on. She stared at the engine indicators, 2 blank lines, mocking them with silence. 300. The first officer yelled, "Captain, prepare to level." Not yet, not yet. The airspeed hit its peak. Now, Myra barked. The captain pulled back. The plane leveled violently. The cabin jerked with a force that slammed people into their seats. Oxygen masks dropped. Loose objects rolled forward. Someone screamed that this was the end. But Myra didn't hear them. She heard one thing, a sound she'd prayed for. A soft whir, a cough, a rumbling groan. Then the right engine surged. The entire aircraft shook as the turbine caught rotation. Sputtering, choking, but alive. It's spooling. The first officer yelled. Mira's heart hammered. Left engine still dead. Keep it steady. Don't overload the right. The engine stabilized at partial thrust. Not enough to climb, not enough for comfort, but enough to control descent. In the cabin. Passengers who thought they'd just died now cried tears of hope. The captain wiped his forehead. Okay, we can work with one. What now? Myra scanned the displays. We need altitude to attempt another restart. How much do we have? The first officer checked. His face went pale. We're at 11,000 feet. Not enough. Not even close. Myra closed her eyes for a moment, not in fear, but in calculation. Captain, she said, we need every foot of altitude we can get. Start banking toward lower terrain. There's a valley to the east, the first officer added. Shallow slope. Good, Myra said. Turn us gradually. Right engine, at controlled thrust. Don't push it too hard. The captain followed her command. The plane leaned slightly, gliding toward the valley. The right engine strained, but held. Mira focused on the left engine. Displays dead, completely dead. It wasn't coming back. And the right engine wasn't strong enough to keep them in the air for long. They wouldn't reach any runway. Not even close. Nearest terrain? She asked quietly. The first officer hesitated. There's a flat stretch. Farmlands. Maybe 7 miles. 7 miles. The plane could glide 4. Silence stabbed the cockpit. The captain looked at Mira, his eyes hollow. So this is it. Myra stared out the window, the sun cutting through the clouds, the world stretching below them. Every instinct told her there was still a way. Her instincts had never failed her. No, she said softly, this isn't it. She pointed ahead. We'll glide to the farmlands, but we need precision. No mistakes. The captain nodded numbly. You're calling the shots. No, Myra said. She stepped forward. I'm flying. Both pilots froze. Myra didn't wait for permission. She slid into the jump seat, leaned between them, and took partial control of the yoke with a steady grip. Her movements fluid, confident, terrifyingly calm. The entire aircraft felt as if it understood a pilot had returned to her throne. She adjusted the pitch, by half degrees, delicate corrections that only a fighter pilot would know instinctively. The plane glided smoother. The air pressure stabilized. The cabin stopped shaking. One of the pilots whispered, "My God." Myra didn't look up. "Tell the passengers to brace." The attendant's voice echoed through the speakers, quivering, brace position, heads down, stay down. The world below rose to meet them. The farmland stretched out wide, green, survivable. If she landed perfectly. If the right engine didn't stall. If the ground stayed even. If the wind didn't shift. There were 1,000 ways this could go wrong. Pushed all of them aside. "Captain, I need 60% thrust on the right," she commanded. He complied. The engine groaned, then steadied. Myra angled the plane lower. Trees rushed beneath them. The runway of Earth drew closer. She whispered to herself, "Come on, girl, just once more. Just hold together." The landing gear wasn't designed for this kind of terrain. It would snap on impact. She knew it. Accepting it was another matter. She waited, gear down. She ordered at the perfect second. The captain dropped the landing gear. The wheels locked. The farmland rushed. Up. Myra pulled back gently. The tail scraped, first sending sparks flying. The passengers screamed. Again, the main wheels slammed into the earth. The entire plane bounced, crashed back down. The right engine tore through soil, ripping apart in a spray of metal and dirt. The cabin lurched like a beast in pain. But Mira held the yoke, muscles burning as she fought to keep the plane aligned. Straight, survivable. The fuselage skidded across the field, carving a long scar through the ground. Panels ripped off. Bags flew. People cried. The plane shuddered, slowing, then stopped. Silence. Unreal silence. Smoke drifted from the ruined engine. Dirt filled the air. Somewhere, a child sobbed into his mother's chest. Someone whispered a thank you to a god they'd forgotten they believed in. The captain sat frozen, hands still on the controls. The first officer wiped tears he didn't remember shedding. Mira closed her eyes. Her entire body shook, not from fear, but from the weight of returning to a life she'd tried to bury. The captain finally whispered, "Voice hoarse, you just saved 147 people." Mira didn't answer. She unbuckled quietly, ready to disappear again, but the captain asked the question she'd hoped no one would. "Who are you?" Myra exhaled slowly. For the first time in years, she told the truth. "My name is Captain Myra Hale, United States Air Force, former callsign, Falcon 6. The first officer gasped. "Falcon 6? You're dead. They said you died in the Cascadia mission." Myra gave a tired, broken smile. "Yeah, that's what they wanted everyone to believe." Before they could ask more, the emergency doors opened. Passengers evacuated into the sunlight, shaking, limping, some crying, some laughing hysterically. A few approached Myra, trying to thank her, but she slipped away from them, moving toward the open field toward silence. She didn't want cameras. She didn't want recognition. She didn't want any of it, but she got it anyway. The first person to see her walking alone shouted to the others, "That's her. She saved us." Phones rose into the air. People gathered around her. Someone cried, "You're a hero." Another yelled, "Tell us your name." Then a little girl, her small face streaked with dust and tears, up and hugged Mira's leg. "Thank you for not letting us fall," she whispered. Myra froze. Something inside her cracked open. She slowly placed her hand on the girl's back, her breath trembling. Reporters arrived minutes later. Police, paramedics, FAA officials, TV crews. All of them asking questions. All of them wanting to know who she was. The ghost who saved a Boeing 737, the fighter pilot who refused to die. Myra looked at the sea of faces, all desperate for answers. She wasn't supposed to exist. She wasn't supposed to be here. And yet, 147 people went home because she was. For the first time, she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't a ghost. She was simply Myra. The captain stepped beside her and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You didn't just save a plane," he whispered. "You came back to life." And with the world watching, cameras pointed at her, hearts pounding in their chests. Myra Hale finally lifted her head. Not as a ghost, not as a runaway soldier, but as the pilot she was always meant to be. Alive, legendary, unforgettable, and the world would never forget the day they learned the truth. Nobody knew she used to be a fighter pilot until she saved the Boeing 7.